Thank you, Chairman Comer, for holding this important hearing. As I said on Monday, good riddance to Governor Walz, but he cannot escape accountability for the estimated $9 billion in fraud. How did this happen? And where the hell has the Twin Cities media been? The Star Tribune is complicit. They've had this story for years, if you just heard, and they've refused to report anything on it. In fact, they continue to try and cover up. Our Minnesota Republican colleagues have demanded answers and accountability for years, but have seen nothing from Walz, his administration, our Democrat colleagues like Tina Smith, Amy Klobuchar, Ilhan Omar, and Angie Craig, or the worthless Star Tribune. Thank God for President Donald J. Trump for finally bringing attention to this issue. Representative Rarick, I'm going to begin with you. You've been working on this issue for years. You've spoken to the whistleblowers personally. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You have an understanding that 1,000 whistleblowers running an account on X have come forward to expose fraud in Minnesota state agencies, and they have been entirely ignored by Tim Walz and have even been retaliated against. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Even this morning, I got another message.
Well, in your experience, are their claims credible or are they politically motivated against Walz?
They are completely credible, not politically motivated.
In fact, many of these are Walz administration employees, correct?
They are actually Democrats as well.
Can you quickly give us one example of the retaliation these folks have been facing?
Yeah.
So they're all going to throw each other under the bus now, and that's what happens. That's why in Australia, possibly Anthony Albanese doesn't want to have a Royal Commission into Islamic jihadism finding its way onto Bondi Beach because they ignored it. This is another case where it's willful blindness. The politicians knew what was going on and they willfully chose not to. Willful blindness, it's called. And here's a very quick definition of willful blindness from my friend, ChatGTP 5.2. Willful blindness is deliberately avoiding learning a fact, right? So you can deny knowing it. It's willfully avoiding, deliberately avoiding learning a fact so you can deny knowing it when you strongly suspect it's true. It can even be knowing the fact but denying it when you strongly suspect it's true. Very, very interesting, viewers. And a lot of the politicians are getting caught for this now.
Yes, I can. In my opening statement, I mentioned that the most severe ones was that they would be fired with cause, so they couldn't have unemployment insurance, that they would be blacklisted from all state agencies, and I bet that it's also Hennepin County and Ramsey County, as you know, those are Democrat-run, and much, much more.
Based on what you've learned, Representative, over the last several years, do you have any doubt that Governor Tim Walz knew about this fraud as it was occurring?
He absolutely knew that it was occurring.
Thank you. The Housing Stability Services Program was have been facing.
Yes, I can. In my opening statement,
Based on what you've learned, Representative, over the last several years, do you have any doubt that Governor Tim Walz knew about this fraud as it was occurring?
He absolutely knew that it was occurring.
So this is why politicians don't want these things to come out, because they end up being found what? Being found guilty. Okay, you've got to understand, politicians aren't some special breed of human. They're still governed by the same morals and principles and rules of law as what we are. The only problem that we've got and the advantage that they have is they can, by persuasion or by political influence or power, dodge things, and that's called willful blindness.
The Housing Stability Services Program was estimated to cost about $2.6 million per year, but before it was shut down last October, it was on track to run about $122 million in 2025. In fact, I think they sucked $161 million out of it from the point it started in 2020 until it was finally shut down. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, and Joe Thompson believes that 90% of that was fraud.
Yeah. The Quality Leering Center, as uncovered by Nick Shirley, received almost $10 million in funding. Is that accurate?
I believe it is.
There are more than 80 autism centers in Minnesota under investigation. Is that true?
I believe it is, yes.
It's clear that someone is criminally complicit. You can't just let this amount of money get out of your administration over a period of 7 years without knowing. There was a hearing in the state regarding the fraudulent housing stabilization program, but before that hearing, Governor Walz fired the official who was slated to testify so that they could not testify and expose what was happening under Governor Walz's watch.
So that's what they'll do. You'll see a lot of shifts, particularly during COVID. There was a long run of authoritarianism to make sure that they got out as many vaccine shots as they could. And then as COVID started to come to a climax, they'd gotten out all the shots that they proposed that they could before it all started. As it come to a close, if you think back, a lot of the political people started to resign, and their job was done. And they were all paid. They were paid for what they did.
Governor Walz or Attorney General Ellison fired anyone else to your knowledge, Representative?
Not to my knowledge, and that was Eric Rumdahl, and his administration believes that he was not fired, but I say he was fired because it was too convenient.
Great. Representative Hudson.
So what you'll find also is there's another clue there. They'll fire people but say they resigned. Again, they'll fire people who are a threat to exposing them, but say they resigned, which isn't true.
Is it true that 90% of the individuals charged, regardless of what your colleague on the panel just said with his facts and figures, 90% of the individuals charged or indicted with the $250 million Feeding Our Future COVID fraud are of Somali descent?
I believe that to be correct.
Are you aware that in a 2021 video, Mr. Ellison promised that he would obstruct his own agencies in their investigation of Somali fraud?
I am very much aware of that.
It's no wonder that criminals in the Somali community felt they were free to steal taxpayer dollars. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Marion. Do you have any doubt that Tim Walz knew about this fraud as it was occurring?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so I'm just going to find you something that I was studying this morning, which you'll find very, very interesting, because this is the problem within cults, and particularly the Islamic cult, is the negation of moral and integrity.
And it is, how do we reform that, and how do we make it accountable for everyone?
Great. Eric Rasmussen.
Yes, I just put in Adam Smith's The Theory of Moral Sentiments, which is a book you'd like if you haven't read it. I like Banfield also, and I think the natural state of mankind is to only care about your family or your village. So really, Somalia is more the ordinary, and America is the oddity.
Yes.
But Christianity has made a big difference with that, because it was universal. It was, don't care just about Jews, but about everybody. Is there any way Christianity could be made to appeal to the Somalis in Minneapolis? How would you appeal to Somalis to look seriously into Christianity?
I think that what you said just now is the question that should have been asked 30 years ago. It's not only how should we do it, but we should have done it. So that is what we have neglected to do, not just with Somalis, but with everyone else who comes from a broken society. When you rescue people, let me stick with the Somalis. Let's take our most famous Somali congresswoman, Ilhan Omar. To the extent that her father was of Siad Barre's regime, the civil war occurs, she's in a refugee camp. She's a child. And she's rescued out of that by the Americans, and she and her family are resettled somewhere in America. There you have to ask the question that maybe Adam Smith would have asked prior to the rescuing, which is, if we Americans, we are the odd ones out, America is the exceptional country, if we're going to go out of our way to rescue people from, Hobbesian circumstances, are we only going to offer them food and shelter and welfare benefits and Medicaid, etc.? Is that the bread of life? Or are we going to give them something more special, what makes us special? Which is, that was the time when we should have told and asked the questions, why do you think your country failed? Why do you think clanism fails? Why do you think that the Soviet narrative of communism failed? We didn't do any of that. We just kept showering them with material benefits without explaining where all that comes from. And said, we're Americans, we are generous, and you can use the story of the founding fathers whenever it suits you. Today you're an anti-Semite, but tomorrow you can say, oh, Donald Trump, the 1930s. You can manipulate the story of America at any given moment so that you can extract something materially out of it. But we actually failed to rescue them morally, and we failed to give them what is morally superior. That is my take now.
John.
So she was basically saying you can bring people out of an evil culture. But if you do that, you have to begin immediately to reculturalize them. And if they're not prepared to reculturalize, the evil that is in their culture will parasite into our cultures. And that's what we're seeing here with this fraud. There's no morality at all. It's just a free-for-all.
Walls and Ellison were protecting fraudsters instead of investigating them, and it was purposeful. And it's no coincidence that this is occurring largely in the Somali community. Walls made a sanctuary state, Minnesota, a sanctuary state. He gave free healthcare, free college, and free licenses to illegals. And Walls looked the other way when Somali immigrants were stealing. Representative Robbins, do you have any doubt that Tim Walls knew about this fraud as it was occurring?
None whatsoever.
So all three of you have no doubt in your minds that Tim Walls knew about the $9 billion of fraud during his tenure as governor and did nothing about it. It looks like my time is about to expire, and I do want to say to all of you, on behalf of Minnesota, thank you for being here, and justice will be served. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hudson, who is Salim Saeed and Amy Bach?
I recognize those names as defendants in the Feeding Our Future trial.
They ran Feeding Our Future, is that right?
That's correct.
And they've been indicted?
That's correct.
They've been convicted?
That's correct.
And they're in jail waiting sentences, is that right?
As I understand it.
Okay, I want to go back, because earlier with Mr. Gill, you said that they overlooked the fraud. I think it's worse than that. I think they helped it along. I'm going to go to this meeting that took place, or actually I want to go to March.
And that's a good point by Jim Jordan. You'll find that when these things break down, it's not people that just ignored it. Usually the people that have been willfully blind, when you think of it, by way of mindset, they're accessories of the fact. But it goes deeper than that. When you willfully are blind to something, then not only you're an accessory of the fact, you're giving yourself, you're putting yourself in a dangerous place, because you're allowing yourself then to sink deeper into it. And unfortunately, a lot of these people become involved.
30th, 2021. Is it true back in March of 2021, the Minnesota Department of Education suspended payments to Feeding Our Future, that program? Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
And then a month later, they resumed payments.
That's correct.
What caused them to change their mind?
In my opinion, what caused them to change their mind was pushback from their constituency within the Somali community, who accused the state agencies of being racist.
But what caused them to stop it in the first place? Was it whistleblowers coming forward? Was it like, this something's not right here? What happened?
Apologize for the misunderstanding. The reason they stopped the funds in the first place is because they had credible allegations that there was fraud taking place.
From whistleblowers and others.
Correct.
And just doing their job, looking, this doesn't make sense. We got all these programs, no one's getting fed, and yet money's going out the door like crazy. So they suspended it. And then they started it back up, right? Was there any threat of a lawsuit from the Somali community and folks affiliated with Feeding Our Future?
Mr. Jordan, there was more than a threat. They actually did.
They did? And what was the alleged claim in that lawsuit?
That they were victims of racial discrimination.
Oh, they played the race card, huh? All this fraud going on, money going out, and they played the race card. Now, when I talk...
And viewers, that's where you're going to get this Islamophobia. Islamophobia. Turning to our friend ChatGTP, I asked if it could give me negative connotations birthed out of the word Islamophobia. So Islamophobia carries a built-in negative judgment. In other words, it's a prejudgment. As soon as that word gets said, you're before a jury, right, and a judge. It frames criticism, fear, or a dislike of Islam as an irrational phobia or bigotry, not a potentially reasoned objection. So it undermines a potentially reasonable objection. Okay, it cuts the legs out from under you, any reasonable objection. And it can also work as a conversation stopper, lumping theological or political critique in with anti-Muslim hatred. So it's a word, it's a paralyzing word. It's a mutation word. It's a disabling word. Just out of intrigue, the Oxford Dictionary traces Islamophobia, the word, to the 1920s, with its earliest evidence in 1923. The Merriam-Webster also lists the first known use as 1923.
Talked about not just overlooking it. There was a meeting that took place between the Attorney General and affiliates of Feeding Our Future. Is that right?
That is correct.
And what happened at that meeting? Do we know?
Yeah, we do, because we have it on tape. There was an audio recording made at that meeting that was entered into evidence in the Feeding Our Future trial, and it was later revealed through work from Center of the American Experiment, the full recording. And my observations of what took place in that meeting was that Attorney General Keith Ellison was focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was keeping these folks in business. There were no questions that he asked of these folks about how the kids are doing, the operation, how they're getting fed, who's being helped. Instead, the focus was entirely on ensuring that the money continues to flow. And I'll add that he went so far as to say that he was going to fight these people in reference to the state agencies. The state agencies are his client.
Yeah. And when you said money's going to flow, did money flow to Mr. Ellison's campaign a couple weeks later from some of the folks who were in that meeting?
Sure did.
How much, do we know how much that was?
I do not have that number.
So it wasn't just overlooking the fraud. They were actively trying to make sure this program continued, and then they benefited from that politically with contributions to their campaign, all in this same year, all in 2021, when this was all coming to a head. Is that accurate?
That is my understanding.
So you'll see with things like NDIS, you sit there and you wonder as a battling civilian or citizen, watching how the politicians try and deal with it. They're not going to, because they're not going to until they're confronted as being connected to the fraud itself. Now, if you look at it, if a government knows something is completely out of order to the tune of billions of dollars, okay, billions of dollars, and they really aren't doing anything aggressive about it, then you have to say to yourself, there's got to be some involvement by the government. There's got to be some benefit to this for the government. And that makes the government an accessory to the fact.
Because as I look, it's like 6 different federal agencies. Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, Small Business Association, Housing, Urban Development, Department of Labor, Department of Agriculture. In this program and a bunch of others, they were shaking down the entire federal government, it looked like. 6 different federal agencies. I think you pointed out, over the last 15 years.
That's correct.
And not only are the Democrat administration overlooking it, they're helping it along. They're assisting it. They're going after whistleblowers, as your colleague pointed out, and they're benefiting from all this politically with contribution to their campaign. Not to mention the voting issue that you referenced earlier as well.
And this will be, see, what you're seeing here is an echo of COVID. Anybody that objected to the vaccine or the means and methods and ways in which they wanted to deliver it, what happened? You got threatened with, well, you lost your job, etc. The evil manipulation and coercion and determination to make sure as many vaccines as possible got out, whether it was right or wrong, was proof that it was a money spin. It wasn't about a pandemic, because I just watched it all play out. I never got the vaccine or anything. I never changed one day of sport, never lost one job, one day at work. As a matter of fact, at work, the people who got the vaccine were sick, and we were being abused for not getting the vaccine, and we weren't sick. So how do you work that out? You can't work that out. It was a scam. It was a plandemic for the accumulation of trillions of dollars at the expense of who? At the expense of the citizens and civilians. And they didn't care if you lost your job or had no food or lost your house or anything like that. They locked you up and shot rubber bullets if you spoke against it. They fired rubber bullets at the people in Victoria. Oh, it was a terrible scandal. And these are the covert scandals that are taking place in our communities and through the governments. And there's people in the communities that are benefiting from these fraudulent scandals. They know how to play it within the law to not get caught.
All accurate?
I believe so.
Oh, now there's more than 6 agencies involved. There's 6 federal agencies that got shaken down, but there's 2 other agencies involved now, the FBI and the DOJ, right? How many people have been indicted now?
I do not have that number in front of me, but it's significant.
I don't know how long y'all been in the legislature. We appreciate your work, appreciate what you do. But have you ever seen anything like this in your time in the I've never seen anything like this in an AT. Miss Robbins, you're the chair.
No, sir, we have never seen anything on this scale. It is unbelievable. As Joe Thompson said, it is breathtaking and cannot be overstated.
Yeah, well.
I've got news for these people. We've been watching this in Australia with the NDIS for years and years. It was a scheme that came out to help disabled people, and it turned into a big fraud opportunity with what these people are dealing with here in Minnesota with the Somalis, and how Islam and its lack of morality in the minds of its followers will just overtake integrity to get what it wants. I'll see you on the next one. We'll keep an eye on this, and I'll keep putting these out as far as I can. Bye for now.